He worked with Priti Patel. He's now a political commentator, and he's joining me in the studio here, Mr. James Starkey. Hello, sir. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for having me on, Jonathan.
Delighted to have you on, James. Well, look, Prime Minister's questions, you and I were tuning in, all about the economy, as we expected from Kemi Badenoch ahead of next week's budget, holding Sir Keir Starmer's feet to the fire about the fact that Rachel Reeves promised that the thresholds in where we start paying tax, whether that be at 20%, 40% or even 45%, would be unfrozen, and that would slowly creep up as of 2028. But after the U-turn on the initial manifesto commitment to not increase income taxes, then the U-turn on the U-turn, as Kemi Badenoch pointed out, to then actually say that we're not going to raise income tax, albeit this is all briefed by the Treasury, despite what Sir Keir Starmer was trying to claim. It now seems that the one way they're going to claw money is by continuing the freeze on thresholds, which Rachel Reeves said, in her own words, would hurt working people. Would this be a serious breach of a promise, again, from Rachel Reeves?
I mean, look, I think that promise was breached last year. I don't think, I mean, when they did the budget last year and they raised NICs, Employers' National Insurance, and they tried to claim, well, it wasn't on working people because the employers are paying for it, people saw through it. And if they didn't at the time, they saw in the months after that jobs were shedded in their tens of thousands. So I think they were on pretty shaky ground already. I mean, the U-turns on U-turns, I don't know about U-turns, it's more like they're going through spaghetti junction with the different policies they've got, because there's a new one each week. I think it's pretty well covered. I don't think we've ever seen a budget where we've seen so much of it leaked beforehand.
The Speaker even referred to it as the hokey-cokey budget in Parliament when he was telling off the government for all the leaks that have been going into the press.
Yeah, and that there's a kind of jokey side to that, as you can see at PMQs. It gives good fodder to the other parties, but there's a serious side. Businesses don't know where they are, and the economy can't afford that right now. You know, we've got the inflation statistics out today. It's come down, that's good news, but it's still nearly 2% above where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, down from 3.8% to 3.6%. So, but food inflation going up from 4.5 to 4.9%, which will be a worry for those when it comes to doing their food shops in the run up to Christmas.
People listening and watching, or you know, they'll be looking at their food bills and other bills, and they'll have seen them gone up over the last year. And so this kind of the way they've approached the budget, it has a serious side to it. This is the economy they're supposed to be running.
You obviously, James, you work in the business world. You obviously have a number of clients that will be looking ahead of this budget. Are they feeling quite uneasy in terms of just how much has been briefed, unbriefed, U-turn, sort of hinted at? How serious is this causing the business world in terms of fear about what may or may not be coming through and how that may or may not impact them?
I think, so what I would say about the business world generally speaking is that at the last election, no offence to you and your former colleagues, I think after several years of kind of talk about hokey-cokey, you had hokey-cokey prime ministers.
No, it was very stable, James. It was very stable. Strong and stable, I think Theresa May said.
One second, you had to kind of knock on the Downing Street door just to double check who was in there at any given time. But so I think after that, people felt like maybe we won't get everything that we want from a Labour government. You know, they knew the workers' rights stuff was going to come. That was signalled before the election. I think it's fair to say business didn't love some of that. But I think there's the idea of stability. That was the thing which, if you spoke to business, and Reeves spent a lot of time before the last election engaging with businesses in these famous kind of smoked salmon breakfasts that she was having, I think people kind of thought, I don't know if I agree with everything they say and do, but at least we'll have stability. You know, we had in the kind of 8 years before referendums and elections and leadership elections. Now that's kind of been blown out of the water. You know, we went into Labour conference with Andy Burnham, the Manchester mayor, openly challenging Keir Starmer to leadership. Well, today, a week before the budget, we've then got a Labour MP saying he's going to give up his seat so Andy Burnham can have another go. And that was after Downing Street themselves spending half of last week themselves briefing that their own health secretary was trying to take the job of the Prime Minister.
Well, so it's all stable though. Keir Starmer has done that Mirror interview, James, this week, where he's told the Daily Mirror, I will lead the Labour Party into the next election, so no one needs to fear about anything.
I think these are the kinds of things. It's like when you say to someone, like you say, hey, by the way, we're really getting on, we're really, really happy. You know, if you have to tell someone that, you're probably not. So I think if you have to come out and say like, oh, I'm definitely, you know, it should generally speaking be a given that a leader of a party that won a majority of 180 is going to fight the next election. The fact that the Prime Minister is having to do interviews. So, I mean, this is also after a week after. I mean, we kind of brushed over it because so much stuff's happened. They had a leak inquiry within 24 hours. So we know the leak came from Downing Street.
By the way, the leak inquiry was ironically leaked.
It was ironically leaked, classic of the genre. But you know, within 24 hours, the Prime Minister said, "Well, nothing to see here. Don't know where this is from."
In fact, he was assured that it hadn't come from Number 10. His officials had said to him, "It definitely didn't come from us."
Which the leak. So the leak inquiry apparently involved him asking people if they've leaked stuff, and them saying no, and then him telling the country, "Well, it's totally fine." And this is now how the country is being run.
Well, James, you mentioned earlier that in the last hour, Clive Lewis, the Labour MP for Norwich South, who, to be fair, is one of the first MPs to say the leadership has to change, at least on the record that is, has indeed said on another show this lunchtime that he is, quote, willing to give up his Norwich South seat with its 13,000 Labour majority to Andy Burnham, if that is the way of getting Andy Burnham in. Now, James, you know that area. As I say, 13,000 majority, but most listeners won't know that the interesting thing was the party that came second in that seat was the Green Party, where they saw a 13.5% increase in their vote share. We've seen Zach Polanski on the march of Labour's left. We see that he is, wherever people think of him, engaging, dynamic. He speaks like a normal person. He would certainly be able to grab a lot of headlines in an election. Do you think Clive Lewis's seat is as safe for Andy Burnham as Clive Lewis thinks, or do you think this is the Green Party will sniff an opportunity?
So I don't. I think, look, politics has changed a lot. You know, much like conventions in society. So I think, you know, if you go back to the 70s, generally speaking, you know, you kind of stuck with the person you were with. So if you started as a Labour voter at 18, you carried on monogamously and stuck with Labour. Now I think you have a kind of political polyamory where you'll see kind of, there's no kind of monogamy between the voter and the party. And so we saw this both at the benefit and the downfall of the Conservative Party. You know, it benefited the Conservative Party in 2019 because they went from, you know, tiny, almost no majority to a huge majority, which you came in on. And the kind of conventional wisdom up until really the 90s, even the noughties with Blair, would have been you get a big majority and you kind of spend that capital, if you like, over a couple of elections, and it goes down and eventually you get booted out, and then the other major party, the Tories or Labour, comes in. That's not the case anymore. And so I think the reason that's important is when we look at by-elections, are there any seats now that we say that's a safe Labour or Tory seat? Now, me and you know a lot of Tories. I don't know a lot of Tory MPs who tell me they've got a safe seat.
No, I can't think of one seat.
And if they did tell me, I'd say that they were deluded, right? So I think there's that. So with Clive has a big majority. Clive is to the very much, which I think he wouldn't mind me saying, is to the far left of the Labour Party, which are the kind of traditional left party. And so if Burnham comes in and you parachute someone, no one likes people being parachuted in their constituency.
All the way from Manchester to Norwich, that is a journey.
I think, you know, no one likes that wherever they are. So I think with Polanski leading the Greens, I reckon you would have a big fight on your hands in a by-election there.
And how embarrassing could that be for Andy Burnham, as well as obviously how embarrassing could it be for Keir Starmer, because they'll have to have photo ops side by side, pretending to be the best of friends, but everyone knows Andy Burnham's there to do one thing, which is to take Keir Starmer out of the top job. We have seen, amazingly, Labour seems to have not learnt any lessons from the last Conservative government. I feel like I'm living in 2022 when I read stories like this in the Times that says this new Tribune group, which is made up of 80 Labour MPs, it's sort of a rebranding it's gone through, has said that apparently they've got the letters, they've got the 80 signatures they need to formally challenge Sir Keir Starmer. You and I have heard that all before, James. They're touting around, which I'm sure these people will be delighted, Lucy Powell, Louise Haigh, Lisa Nandy as potential. This feels like if this were to happen, one of these ladies would be used as a stalking horse, because you're not going to see a Wes Streeting or Angela Rayner put themselves front and centre to be the one wielding the knife. They'll be the one who came in and went, I'm only here because the knife was wielded and someone's got to pull the ship back together. But we have got one of the group has said that their colleagues were living in cloud cuckoo land and warned that the public would not reward them for a destructive leadership challenge. Do you think this MP, whoever this is, has apparently learnt from the Conservatives between 2022 and 2024, whereas in maybe the majority of the others simply are living and forgetting the very near recent times that a leadership challenge is going to lead to bloody warfare. It's going to lead to cementing in factionality within their party, and ultimately will lead to one side of the party being very unhappy, grumbling more backbenches, more undermining, more rebellions, and the public will just go, you spent all your time talking about issues like Gaza and wealth taxes, not about the cost of living and not about reducing immigration.
I think people are fed up with these Westminster games, as they will see them. You know, parties spending their time, leadership plotting, and, you know, the letters thing, we've seen that in the Tory party. I mean, sometimes letters can even be withdrawn. But we've probably been involved in some way. I don't want to reveal what you were up to in the latter days of the Tory government, Jonathan. We've probably been involved in some ways of some of these stories about whether people have the 40 letters or the 80 that Labour would need to have a leadership challenge. I don't really buy that, to be honest, that you could keep...
Because they're not secret, they have to go on the record, don't they, these 80?
But I think me and you both know as well, in Westminster, once you start telling more than 7 to 10 people, everybody knows about it. So if they really have gone to more than 20, anything up to 80 people, then a lot more people would know about it on that. So that seems like someone's told a journalist, I've got the 80 letters. The journalist has thought, well, it's quite a good story. They're anonymous. I can't really check the 79 people, so I'm just going to write it anyway. So I'm not to cast aspersions on whichever journalist wrote that story. It is indeed a good story, interesting story. But it's not a secret that Keir's getting challenged. I mean, the Downing Street, I think they are kind of seeing shadows, but they're very much in the bunker. But Downing Street themselves think that they're getting a leadership challenge.
Openly briefing that they're prepared.
But you're absolutely right. You know, people wake up this morning, they'll see food price inflation. There'll be
petrol pump prices.
Maybe they've been on the phone to their doctors trying to get a GP appointment. You know, maybe they will have, you know, in their local school, the RAC issues hasn't been sorted out, etc., etc., and they'll be looking at their wage slip now and maybe in a couple of weeks' time, and they'll be worse off with the taxes. You know, most people's cost of living, most people's standard of living has at best stayed the same for the past few years. And they'll read stories like this and think, what are you doing? Just over a year ago, we elected you because, let's not forget, Labour said to the British public, we're different. We'll do things differently. You know, look at this clown show, the Tory party. We'll come in and provide stability. We won't be corrupt. Well, they've lost, on average, about a minister every month through some kind of resignation.
Yes.
So, failed on that. We'll keep our promises. Failed on that in the first budget. Probably going to fail on it again in a week's time. We'll sort out the economy, but that doesn't look like it's going too good. I mean, the only kind of rough positive news story they've got is probably the NHS, where they have seen some inroads to the waiting lists, but you know, that's minor, kind of still early days. But you know, I think you should give them some credit from that. So yeah, I think the public would just think these people are, you know, they should just get focused on their day job, which is making the country better.
Well, ladies and gents, I want you to focus on your day job, and that involves calling in, telling us that if Sir Keir Starmer remains as Prime Minister after next May, do you think that he's the man that could lead the Labour Party into the next general election? Do you want Sir Keir Starmer leading the Labour Party? Would a change of leader change your mind about Labour?